I'm going to do something that I've never done in a congressional hearing before, and that is plead for help from the American people, plead for help from my Republican colleagues on something that we actually all agree on, because lives are at stake right now. I'm going to start by describing the facts on the ground. Millions of people are at risk of dying of starvation in areas of the world where Democrats and Republicans have already agreed and committed to feeding them with American-grown food for humanitarian reasons and for global stability. But yesterday, I spoke with people in charge of warehouses in Sudan and Ethiopia, warehouses full of food, but because of Doge, that food is trapped in the warehouse, out of reach of starving and dying moms and kids. In those two countries alone, 150,000 children and moms are at risk of dying this month if that food is not delivered from the warehouse to them right up the road. Everyone agrees that's not supposed to happen. Republicans voted for this food, and Democrats voted for this food to get out. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says the food should go out as part of his life-saving waiver. DOGE Chairwoman Marjorie Taylor Greene started this hearing by saying that life-saving food programs should still be running. We have paid for the food, and we have shipped it, and it is sitting trapped in the warehouse because DOGE is blocking the payments needed to get the food out to the people who need it. So here's what that means. It means that kids are dying, and more will die tomorrow, of severe acute malnutrition. If you want nightmares, just Google severe acute malnutrition and look at the photos. The way that healthcare workers determine if a kid is dying of this is they measure their bicep. And if their bicep is less than 4.5 inches around, then that means you could die of starvation tomorrow. Think of a kid's arm fitting through this hole. Think of your kid's arm fitting through this hole. These kids could die tomorrow. You've heard today about the waiver for life-saving humanitarian assistance, and all I'm asking is for Rubio's waiver to be made real. People watching at home, you can do something about this. I know many of these hearings are live on Fox News. I'm a Democrat. For many of the people watching, you may not agree with me on many issues, but I think we can all agree that this food needs to get out of the warehouse and to these kids. I've gotten phone calls from conservative friends, people of faith that moved to Africa to live out their faith of I was naked and you clothed me, I was hungry and you fed me, and they agree that this food should be given out. So call your Republican congressperson, call the White House, tell them you know they didn't mean to do this, but that this food needs to go out tomorrow. If you're in the press, cover this story. Ask questions about Ethiopia. Ask questions about Sudan. Tell the world about this. And to my Republican colleagues, DOGE is not going to listen to me, but you can fix this. Pick up the phone, make a phone call. Y'all could save lives today. Send an email. Please, put politics aside, get the food out of the warehouse, save these kids' lives. You can save these kids' lives. With that, I yield back. Today, we've heard from House Republicans on this committee support for Trump and Musk's plan to abolish the Department of Education, to slash critical programs that help students like Title I, Pell Grants, financial aid, and programs that help kids learn, all to pay for a tax break for Trump's billionaire buddies and for friends of Elon Musk.
Does accepting money from foreign sources lead to an education system being beholden to the values, influences that don't share American values?
Absolutely. We don't know who is writing the books. I think for parents to actually know that information means that they can make an informed decision whether they want their child to enroll in a Mandarin course taught by a Communist Party official or if maybe they want to take a Spanish course instead. Parents deserve the right to make that decision with complete information, which as of this moment in time, they currently do not have.
As a parent, I know what's best for my kid, and I would think everybody in this room would feel the same way. You would do everyththing you could to get your child out of a failing school system. Well, we need to start looking at other people's children the way we look at ours. Ms. Neely, your testimony, you mentioned the school districts paid DEI consultants millions of dollars. Can you explain to us exactly how those DEI consultants have been, what they were paid for?
Sure. In 2021, we released what we called our consultant report card. We identified over 100 consultants with hundreds of contracts in dozens of districts across the country, making money hand over fist, encouraging districts to do things like privilege walks, privilege bingo, things that are not helping children but are actively hurting them. A study by the Network Contagion Research Institute showed that DEI programming, surprise, surprise, leads to more divisions in interpersonal relationships. And so when we see districts spend money on this, it actually might have been better use literally lighting on a fire, because at least then children would be warm instead of hating each other.
Today, we've heard on committee alarming support from House Republicans for a national voucher scam that would pull money out of our public schools and hand it out in private contracts just to enrich their billionaire donors and their friends.
This is the status quo. It is failure, continuing decline, a continual dimming of the prospects of America's young people and a diminished capacity of America to lead the world. And the second response, also inadequate, is to say the solution is to just spend more money under the current system. Because as we can see, there has been an inverse relationship between spending and student achievement. I think that there are principles that you can clearly identify with successful school systems. They allow flexibility in terms of how schools are operated. They demand accountability for actual outcomes. And then they provide parents and families with choices. Now, this, of course, is generally a characterization of how charter schools work. And charter schools have been very successful in many states across the country.
And if you can't believe it, just take a look at what's happened here over the last couple of months. Musk has been using the federal government to get himself even more rich. He spent $277 million to elect Donald Trump, and since the election, he's become $154 billion richer. How is making billionaires richer while taking money away from our kids? How is that good for education? How is that good for student outcomes? How is that good for our community? How is that good for our taxpayers? It's good for no one but Trump's ego and for Musk's pocketbook. I want to start off by acknowledging that this morning, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office announced that more than 5 million Americans can lose their health care because of the Medicaid cuts being pushed by Republican members of Congress. So, of course, Republicans on the Government Efficiency Committee are holding an emergency hearing on semi-pro fencing. Not fences like the kind that goes around a building, but like the sport with the swords. And I've knocked on thousands of doors and talked to thousands of Republican, Independent, and Democratic voters in my career. And not a single time has someone flung open their door and said, "Thank God you're here, Congressman. I want to ask you about transgender people fencing." It's just never happened. I've never even met a fencer before. I've just seen it on The Parent Trap. I'm sure it's a great sport, but what the hell are we doing here? Seriously, we're here because Chairwoman Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks that if she picks on vulnerable people, like trans folks, she can avoid having a discussion about the allegations of insider trading against her. She thinks that she can distract from the fact that Trump and MAGA Republicans are raising your costs every single day, suppressing your wages every single day, stealing your taxpayer dollars every single day, and threatening your health care. That's the reason we're at this crazy hearing today. Here we are in a subcommittee supposedly about government efficiency, spending hours upon hours trashing trans people and talking about trans folks in sports. There's more members on this committee than there are trans people in all of college sports. Of the 500,000 student athletes in America, about 10 of them are trans. Not 10,000, 10. In Olympics, there are even fewer. So in my opinion, sports leagues will do a much better job than politicians up here on this committee coming up with fair and thoughtful ways of handling who does and who does not qualify for which sports. But I think that instead of picking on LGBT people, politicians in this country should be singularly focused on improving the economy for every single working American. That's my crazy idea. Ms. Goss-Graves, Republicans have called an emergency hearing on trans athletes in the sport of fencing today. Can you tell me, how many college fencers are there total in the entire United States?
I think about 1,000.
Compare that to, do you know how many people rely on Medicaid in this country?
That's more like 80 million.
And Social Security?
That's more like 70 million.
So 80 million people rely on Medicaid, 70 million people on Social Security. We're talking about 1,000 college fencers, period. How many hearings do you think this committee has held on Elon Musk pushing Social Security to the brink of collapse?
Oh my God.
I don't think any.
0 hearings. How many hearings have we had about the millions of Americans who could lose Medicaid because of the cuts Republicans are pushing today?
Well, 0.
That is correct. 0 hearings on these issues that impact us all. Republicans have called hearing after hearing obsessed with trans folks in sports, which of course only affects a tiny sliver of Americans, but no hearings on Medicaid, no hearings on Social Security, no hearings on raising wages and lowering costs. So if you're sitting at home watching, you need to know the goal of this hearing is for Republicans to distract you from their own lies, their own corruption, and their own failure. The goal of this hearing is to make sure that Fox News has something to talk about other than Elon Musk getting billions of dollars a year in government contracts while cutting services for you. The goal of this hearing is to make sure that Fox News has something else to talk about other than Chairwoman Marjorie Taylor Greene's alleged insider trading. It's a sick reality right now in American politics that right-wing Republican officials think that picking on trans people is how they'll earn more votes and raise more money. They pick on Americans that are already facing discrimination and violence, and they're making those challenges worse. They're trying to pull the oldest trick in the book. Next time you go vote, ask yourself if these second-rate schoolyard bullies are looking out for you or if they're scammers just like the man that holds their leash.
The gentleman's time has expired. It's important to point out that Democrat members today are not asking the 2 young ladies that are here representing their sports, and this is what the hearing is about today. I now recognize Chairman Comer from Kentucky.
Chairman, I don't know why Republican members even show up to this committee or to Congress when it's clear who's really in charge of the federal government right now, and that's Elon Musk. And at the beginning of this hearing, when we asked our Republican colleagues if we could bring Mr. Musk to this committee, Republicans ran cover for him. They want him hiding in the White House tweeting, and they voted unanimously that they didn't want to hear from Elon Musk. Supposedly, this committee is supposed to be about rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse, and I agree. So let's talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. The biggest fraud in U.S. government right now is Elon Musk pretending to care about efficiency when what he cares about is taking your taxpayer dollars, taking your Medicare, taking your Medicaid, taking your Social Security, and enriching himself and his billionaire buddies with it. The biggest abuse in the U.S. government right now is Elon Musk getting $154 billion richer since the election just a few months ago, while consolidating unprecedented power over your money and your government. Mr. Musk invested $227 million in Trump's election and is making billions off of it. That's waste. That's fraud. That's abuse. And speaking of waste, another waste is my House Republican colleagues showing up because they waste their time. they won't speak out about any of these abuses against working people and taxpayers. This is the Oversight Committee, and there are 17 independent inspectors general. They are watchdogs. They are the oversight arm of the federal government. And Trump and Musk illegally fired 17 of them, including a watchdog that was investigating one of Musk's companies. And what I've heard from House Republicans is either silence or defending that kind of behavior. You guys know that it's embarrassing and it's wrong, and that's why you voted to not have Musk here before us. Elon Musk is not doing anything to make government more efficient for working people. He's using his position to more efficiently raid your taxpayer dollars to enrich himself and his friends. I'm told that this hearing is about right-sizing government. So I propose that we start right-sizing our federal government by firing the most dangerous man in it, and that's Elon Musk. To protect our taxpayers, we should fire Elon Musk. To keep American Social Security numbers private, fire Elon Musk. To protect Medicare and Medicaid, fire Elon Musk. To save schools and our jobs, fire Elon Musk. And to protect the idea that American people have a government for the people and by the people, and not for the ultra-rich and by the ultra-rich, we must fire Elon Musk. Attacking working families is nothing new for him. Mr. Musk's biggest factory sits in my district. And the first thing I did after I was elected to Congress was to call for an OSHA investigation into the injuries and deaths of workers building that very factory. Those are investigations to be launched by the Department of Labor, where later today we're hearing that Musk's minions are going to go and maybe start shutting down parts of that key agency that is built to oversee big corporations and defend the interests of workers. Musk's companies, like Tesla, have been sued and found liable for many labor violations. Screwing over working people is just part of the game for him. He has been found liable for improperly giving not safety training to construction workers and withholding wages. OSHA fined Tesla for exposing workers to hazardous chemicals without proper training and monitoring. OSHA opened up investigation into deaths of workers at the Tesla Gigafactory in 2024. SpaceX, another one of Musk's companies, was found responsible for the deaths of one of their workers, Lonnie LeBlanc, due to head trauma that he got on the job. So now Musk has seemingly unlimited power to take advantage not just of his own employees, not just of American consumers, but of all Americans. Unlimited power to Americans' data. Unlimited power to choke off funding meant for Americans and the programs that people count on. Enough is enough. But thankfully, our country isn't one of Musk's companies. Our country is ours. A billionaire whose career is built on the abuse and exploitation of workers should not have unlimited power in this country. He should be before this committee, and when he comes before this committee, if somebody wants to do the right thing, all you got to do is turn on your mic and say, fire Elon Musk. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back. Secretary McMahon, thank you for joining us here today. Right now, the administration that you are a part of is pushing for a massive tax break for billionaires paid for by massive cuts to health care and food assistance for everyday Americans, including to the children that you're charged with educating. You yourself and your family, as a billionaire family of wealth of about $3.2 billion, can you share with us, do you know how much you and your family will receive in tax benefit if this Republican tax proposal gets pushed through?
No, I've not sat down and worked with my accountants on what tax. I can tell you most.
You have
of the time,
a general sense?
Well, I
Is
can
it
tell you
millions
last
or
time
tens of millions?
taxes went through, I paid more.
And so you think that under this proposal, you will not, like the other billionaires, get millions or tens of millions of dollars in tax benefit?
I think this is kind of a ridiculous line of
No, it's
questioning.
not ridiculous, because here's what's important. The biggest bill being pushed by your administration for your average extremely wealthy person would give about a $4 million benefit. Your family is worth about $3.2 billion, so I imagine that you'd get millions of dollars in benefit from this tax bill. Does that make sense? Does that check out?
I don't know. I'd have to let you know.
Let's just
ask the member
Chairman,
how this refers to
read my
education
question. I'll refer to that,
policy.
Secretary. So, okay, look, there are families watching at home from my district that could lose their health care and they want to know why their health care would get taken away. And what it's paying for is overwhelmingly tax cuts for the wealthiest people in the country. And so what would you spend the $4 million on that you would get a benefit of at least $4 million?
Let's get to your educational line of questioning.
What would those
we
families
deal with in this committee?
What would those families who lose their health care, who are watching, what would you spend the $4 million on that's worth more than their health care?
I'm not going to address the questions relative to me personally. I'm here as the Secretary of Education, and I'm
Okay, so
happy
as the Secretary
to
of
answer the
Education,
questions
then,
relative to education.
as the Secretary of Education, do you think, yes or no, that kids will do better off in school if they have health care and their food needs met? Yes or no?
We all do better, and children will do better in school if their health needs are met. I agree with that.
Good. And so I guess for those kids, which there's going to be hundreds of thousands or millions of kids that lose their health care, how is it okay that they're going to lose their health care so that billionaires and billionaire families, I'm not just even picking just on you, but billionaire families like your own, can get a tax break? What, if you don't even know how many millions of dollars it is you'd get, how is that worth it?
I'm not going to respond to your question.
I think the answer is because it's not worth it. It's not. If you got $3.2 billion or $5 billion or $10 billion,
going off the premise that there's going to be health care that is going to be removed from these children, I'm not sure that is a correct premise. So I'm
every single organization that's looked at this bill knows that millions of people will lose their health care. The latest estimate is at least 11 million people and families, because you wouldn't get the enormous savings that the Republican majority on this committee is looking for unless you kick those millions of people off of their health care. So how can we educate our kids if they don't have a roof over their heads, if they can't see a doctor, if they don't have food assistance? So I'll ask you, do you think it's right for kids to not have food to eat at home before they go to class in order to make sure that a billionaire that doesn't even know how many more millions of dollars they're going to get could just get a few million more?
I want to make sure that as the Secretary of the Department of Education, that the President's plan to make school choice available to every student in our country is what we follow.
And the President's plan specifically takes money away from those kids, specifically takes food away from those families, specifically takes money and sends it to big contractors, big companies, and sends millions of dollars to billionaires like you who don't even know how many extra millions of dollars they're going to get. Before I was a member of Congress, I helped run an after-school program at a high school where many of the kids were getting driven to school in the same car that they slept in at night. They didn't have food. Many of them couldn't see a doctor. They struggled in class. We should be passing a bill to make sure that they've got a decent classroom experience, a roof over their head, food, and health care, not a bill that just funnels who knows, in your opinion, how many millions of dollars to billionaires like those in President Trump's
Gentleman's
cabinet.
time has expired.
Chairwoman Green, you and my Republican colleagues have called this hearing that is all about cutting off money to nonprofits for things that are, quote, contrary to the national interest. What we've heard here is my Republican colleagues going after nuns and priests that feed immigrants, going after nonprofits that do scary things like support our queer youth. It is astounding to me. But we do have one nonprofit leader here, Mr. Krikorian. Mr. Krikorian, you're the director of the Center for Immigration Studies, correct?
Yes.
And according to your organization's website, you do receive taxpayer funding or have from the Department of Justice and the Census Bureau.
Yeah, we did research contracts for them many years ago.
Got it. And so you do have a taxpayer-funded nonprofit, and your nonprofit, as we've discussed in committee before, has shared articles from Kevin McDonald, whose work argues that Jewish people, alleged by him, are genetically driven to destroy Western societies. Is that correct?
We distributed no such article.
But you did distribute work from this anti-Semite, correct?
We distributed work all across the spectrum,
Right, from
New
his-
York
from this
Times to
anti-Semite
anyone
comment.
else.
Got
yes.
it, okay. Your organization has also circulated an article by Holocaust denier John Friend. Is that correct? We said last time we were in a hearing that yes, you have.
We've distributed no articles about Holocaust denial, obviously. It has
But you
nothing to
have
do
from
with us.
Holocaust denier John Friend?
I don't know, but I assume so, yeah. I mean,
Your website right here does talk about that.
yeah.
So I have a yes or no question. Is promoting the work of Holocaust deniers and anti-Semites contrary to the national interest?
Promoting Holocaust denial and what have you is contrary to the national interest. That's why we haven't done it.
But you have promoted the work of Holocaust deniers. Like John Friend.
There were several examples. We've also promoted the work of Open Borders people in that effort to present a broad range of views. Yeah, absolutely. And we don't endorse one way or the other.
So you have promoted the work of Holocaust deniers, but have you received anything from Doge asking whether they want to cut your funding? Have Republicans called you in to ask about your nonprofit and said, hey, we don't like that you've promoted the work of Holocaust deniers? Have you had any funding cut by Doge or by this committee?
We don't get any funding to be cut.
But you have received Department of Justice funding. And
Decades
censorship.
ago, yes, yeah.
And so, look, let me just be real clear here. This hearing is not about taking on nonprofits that are going, quote, against the national interest or who are, quote, extreme. This is all about trying to shut down nonprofits who might share political views that are different from that of the President of the United States. This hearing, they're going after organizations they call radical because they're kind to kids that are having trouble in school, kind to kids that are trying to figure out who they are in the world. They're going after nonprofits, and you, sir, and your nonprofit are saying that the radical people are the priests and nuns that feed the hungry, the nonprofit organizations that, yeah, give shelter to immigrants, that I understand your Center of Immigration Studies does not like immigration very much. But let me tell you, the radical folks aren't the folks out there doing good. The radical folks that you might disagree with, their version of the good, but the radical folks are the people that in your face come to this committee hearing and are sharing through their websites, through their listservs, articles by Holocaust deniers. And you're saying, yeah, we didn't share the Holocaust denying articles, but we shared some of his other stuff. I'll make my last point here clear. I represent Texas. I have long-standing ties to the city of El Paso, where in 2019, 23 people were murdered at a Walmart. The murderer said, quote, it was based on the Hispanic invasion of Texas. And after the shooting, Mr. Krikorian, you said that the manifesto was, quote, remarkably well written. Can you tell us which part of his manifesto was remarkably well written?
What I meant by that was that it seemed improbable for a nutcase like that to have written something that was relatively, at least grammatically correct. That was my point.
Look, folks here on this committee are trying to shut down nonprofits because they disagree with them. Your nonprofit and you, sir, saying that the El Paso shooter had a manifesto that's
The gentleman's
well-written,
time has
that is
expired.
extreme,
The
and
gentleman's
what goes around comes around.
The
And it's just
gentleman's
important.
time has expired.
Chairwoman, okay.
I now recognize Mr. Jack from Georgia for 5
Chairwoman,
minutes.
I just want to make clear
Thank you,
that
Madam
what goes
Chair.
around can come
and
around.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm Greg Casar. I currently represent Texas's 35th Congressional District, and I'm here to speak to support the hundreds of thousands of Texans that I represent and their voting rights, from urban to rural Texans, conservative, liberal Texans, from Bexar to Comal to Hays to Travis County. Texas's 35th Congressional District was drawn by this body coming after the 2010 census. It was constitutionally mandated to be drawn, and it was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court and the conservative justices on that court as a promise to Latino communities in Central Texas to make sure they had meaningful participation and the ability to elect the representative of their choice under the Voting Rights Act. Whether they chose a Democratic or Republican or independent congressman should be up to them. But to fulfill the Voting Rights Act of 1965, this district was drawn and approved. And what I am here to ask is that we continue to preserve and protect those voting rights that so many people fought and marched and bled for, including Dr. King, where we have a street right behind this Capitol named after him, who in 1965 helped a Texas president sign the Voting Rights Act into law. And I ask each of you to focus on protecting those rights. There's no need to redraw these maps and to violate those rights, and to represent the values of Texas, and to represent that critical federal law, and not have somebody tell you from outside of the state, from Mar-a-Lago or from the White House, to violate those basic rights of all Texans. We should be focusing on rebuilding and relief for the people of the Texas Hill Country who have suffered from these floods, not on radical and ridiculous redistricting. Thank you so much, Chairman.
I know we were joking about it, but this is kind of a serious matter in that, our discussions about the only way to do what Donald Trump and the DOJ is suggesting that we do is to make everybody's maps look like that. Could y'all tell us how difficult it's been representing essentially areas that are like 100 miles apart, and what that would do to your communities Congresswoman Garcia and Castro, like if your communities were paired with a community that's 100 miles away, that's an hour away, how would that affect your communities?
Representative, thank you so much for your question. It's critical that these maps be drawn and that maps be drawn to have compactness and to keep communities of interest together.
Right.
We've done the very best we can, despite, like I said, representing rural areas, suburban areas, 2 different major metropolitan areas, to bring people together and have folks know that they can call us. Just like you all, we field thousands of calls from folks that don't have a partisan matter in mind, but just want to make sure they get their back pay from the Army, or they change their address and need to get their Social Security check, or are looking to make sure they get the proper veterans benefits. And all of a sudden, whether you are redrawing the districts for a Democrat or a Republican, if suddenly you are drawing a map that has somebody going hundreds of miles away to another area, that could really complicate things for our constituents. And that's why I echo the urging of my colleague, Congresswoman Garcia, that I think that not just the members of Congress, but the people of Texas deserve to see a map and be able to come and testify to you on a map, because they want to be able to contact their member of Congress. Some of these things are make or break for a person and their bank account or their life or their job. And I think many of my Republican colleagues, I'll tell you, have told me privately that they are deeply concerned with a map being drawn without their input, without the input of legislators, without input of their constituents, because you could draw all sorts of crazy maps that ultimately disenfranchise those constituents, because they may have no idea which congressional district they're in, because the person across the street has a different member of Congress and the person up the block has a different member of Congress. And I would just really hope that you all recognize your responsibility as legislators, just as we try our best to do, to say you should use your independent judgment on whether the people of Texas are getting adequate representation, or if you're just being handed a ChatGPT map being handed over to you from somewhere else in the country. Today, Republicans have called this DOJ hearing called Locking in the DOJ Cuts, Ending Waste, Fraud, and Abuse for Good. And I'm deeply concerned about the cuts that DOJ has made to services for our veterans. So I want to ask our pro-DOJ witnesses today some questions about those cuts. So, Mr. Lips, ProPublica reported that DOJ cuts have stalled life-saving clinical trials for our veterans with head and neck cancer, otherwise known as throat cancer. Can you tell me, are life-saving clinical trials for our veterans waste, or are they fraud, or are they abuse?
I think that's an area of government that is certainly vital, and that there's many things that can be done to improve VA services. I do not know all that DOJ has done for the VA, and I think that if there's anywhere where you could repurpose funds from these wastes that we're talking about, hundreds of billions of dollars misspent.
But if they cut the clinical trials that are helping our veterans with throat cancer, do you agree with those cuts?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Dickerson, leaked documents revealed that a VA hospital in rural Illinois was just forced to close its acute care unit to new patients due to the DOGE cuts. Can you tell me, is closing the doors of a VA acute care unit waste, or is it fraud, or is it abuse?
I don't know all the details about that particular instance, but I think that...
Would you say it's a big problem if DOGE cuts cause the closing of an acute care facility in a VA hospital?
Like I said, I think if funding that facility is a priority, we're running a $2 trillion annual
I think it
deficit,
is. I think it is a priority.
So we can repurpose funds to something if it's a priority.
So you think that if it's not a priority, that it's waste?
I think that's for Congress and the administration to work together to determine.
Exactly. It's for Congress to work on, and the administration should not be calling our acute care veterans facilities waste and closing the doors of an acute care facility without Congress. And frankly, it is a priority, I believe, of the American people to care for our veterans. Mr. Burton, Trump recently eliminated the VA Services Purchasing Program, which just last year helped more than 33,000 veterans make sure that they don't get behind on their mortgage and they don't get thrown out of their home. Can you tell me, is this program that DOGE cut, is it waste, is it fraud, or is it abuse?
That's highly fact-dependent, and I'm not that familiar with that program. I will tell you one thing
And I'll
about...
tell you, Mr. Burton, I'm familiar with it. It helped 33,000 of our veterans not lose their homes, and in my view, our veterans are not waste, fraud, or abuse, nor are they a piggy bank for billionaires' tax cuts like Elon Musk.
I doubt anyone
This is
thinks
my
that.
time, Mr. Burton.
Yep, fine.
I am deeply concerned that President Trump will take reckless action to risk sending more American troops into endless wars in the Middle East. But back at home, he's breaking the sacred promise to our veterans to care for them when and if they come back. Donald Trump has already tried to fire thousands of people at the VA, and recent reporting shows that there are plans to try to fire 80,000 people at the VA. These reckless DOGE cuts have thrown VA hospitals into chaos, and in my own district, I've gotten reports of veterans waiting months for basic services like a wheelchair. I represent San Antonio, Texas, Military City, USA, where we honor the service of our men and women in uniform. And if we want to honor our veterans, we honor it with more than just words. We take actions to care for them when they come home. We don't needlessly send people into harm's way, and we don't cut their services for when they come home. This hearing should not be holding hearings. This committee should not be holding hearings on locking in DOGE cuts. We should be holding hearings about restoring services for our veterans. And while DOGE is screwing over our veterans, the administration is also stealing from seniors. We just learned about a huge new scandal that every senior in America needs to hear about. After Trump and Musk made massive cuts to the staff at the Social Security Administration, they've scrubbed government websites of information about how long it takes to get your phone call answered. They have erased from the websites the delays that it takes to process benefit claims. They have wiped away what used to be publicly available about how long it takes to respond to a 1-800 call at the Social Security Administration. This is a cover-up. And why are they covering it up? Because wait times have exploded. A brave whistleblower just estimated that Trump's changes and Elon Musk's cuts have doubled the amount of time it takes to process a Social Security claim. Everybody needs to hear about it. Social Security is not Elon Musk's piggy bank. I yield back.
The gentleman yields. No one
Madam
loves
Chair.
veterans more than President Trump, and he's made that apparent. That's why he's working for peace
Madam Chair,
right
Madam,
now.
it's not your time right now.
I'm the chair of this committee.
That's not how
I'm the chair.
parliamentary procedure works.
You're not
Madam
recognized, Ms.
Chairwoman.
Stanberry.
You're
not
recognized either. You can't just speak anytime you want.
I'm the
That's
chair of
not
this
how
committee.
That's not how it
Ms.
works.
Stansbury,
Madam-
you're not recognized.
Madam Chairwoman, that is not how
Ms. Stansbury, you're not recognized.
all day, but that's not how
Ms. Stansbury, you're not
parliamentary-
recognized.
We're going to get you a Robert's
Ms.
Rules of
Stansbury,
Order
you're
and
not-
the
A
committee
point of
Ms.
order.
Stansbury,
so that
you're
you
not
can-
recognized.
so that
Point
you
of
can
order.
Understand parliamentary procedure.
Point of order.
Okay.
Point of order.
All right, Madam Chair, calm down. Let's move on.
Ms. Stansbury, you're not recognized. Point of order.
Madam Chair, I've got oh, I'm sorry, you had a point of order.
So,
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, can we decide who's going to speak first and we don't?
Absolutely, I'm the chair of this committee, and Mr.
I know
Gill,
that,
Mr.
but-
Gill from Texas is
you go.
recognized for 5 minutes.
There you
But
go.
Madam Chair, I had unanimous consent. I was trying to.
Without objection.
Thank you so much. This is from Citizens for Responsible Reporting. Doge's big illusion, the heavy cost of Trump administration's so-called cuts. I have another one. Trump administration scrambles to rehire key federal workers after Doge firing. That's 4 hours ago. I have another one. How will we know if Doge is succeeding? I have another one. How the Trump administration's Doge cuts are harming women. I have another one. How Trump's Doge cuts package could put GOP in a bind. I have more, but I'll do them later. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered. I now recognize Mr. Gill from Texas for 5 minutes.